Chapter 1761. Opal loves to renovate. Opal's sudden appearance startled the Lycans, but the little Fae was in a great mood, waving to everyone and brandishing a sketch pad. I have come to help. Tell me what you want the interior of your house to look like, and I can make it true. You see, as a powerful Fae born of an illusion element butterfly, I have all the skills needed for interior renovations. Carl noticed that she left out what people actually called her species, but all the Lycans knew it anyhow. They also knew that she was part of Carl's team, so a member of their guild now, and that she really should be able to do what she claimed. If things turned out a bit odd, well, that was just the price that you paid to deal with the Fae. But it was surely better than these bland and worn buildings left behind by the Hyperion sect. Either they had also used a lot of illusions to upgrade their base, or they simply hadn't cared at all about maintenance. Opal never really considered maintenance when she was making illusions. If they were directly overlaid on an object with reality warp active, nothing would affect the physical building underneath. It was essentially trapped in magical stasis until the illusion broke. I want a princess room with fireflies and fluffy blankets and that soft carpet that feels good on the toe beans, a little girl insisted, looking up at the flying Fae.
Deal.
Let's find your family and get started. Carl, have fun, I'm off. The girl's mother rushed over before her daughter got the Fae to promise anything more. Once a Fae made promises, they rarely broke them, and asking a 6-year-old to do all the household decorating could turn into a disaster very quickly. In her own room, it was probably fine. But in the common areas, they didn't need her turning the place into an illusionary forest or a fairy tale palace. Opal thought that was actually a brilliant idea, but she was not the one that was going to have to clean a fairy tale palace created inside a small bungalow-type house. Not that she would do it anyhow, she just created illusionary helpers when such mundane tasks needed to be taken care of. Actually, now that she thought about it, there really wasn't any reason that she couldn't put them in the houses, right? Which one are you going to pick? Did you want to run one of the shops? I can do the shop and the apartment over it at the same time. I picked runecrafting from the Carl. So I will be running a shop of some sort? Or perhaps selling stuff at the guild house. I don't know, the Lycan girl's father explained. What did you do before? I was one of the Pax repairmen. I have additional skills to fix earth element things like houses and armor. Oh, an armorer who can fix houses? Runecrafting is really perfect for you. Alright, you will likely want a shop of your own, not just the guild house. Once you learn runecrafting right, you can use it to make stuff that will help you fix armor, even if you already have a skill for it. The Lycan smiled, and the mother pointed to a shop near the guild house. As we've got the early choice, why not right here? It's near enough to the edge of town to be easy to find, and not far from the guild house. Opal examined the shop, with the small 2-bedroom apartment overhead. Yes, this should be perfect. I will make a simple shop for you, with a secure storage room, then do up a basic apartment in suitable luxury? Any specific luxuries you'd like. She directed that at the little one, but the mother caught on to the trick too fast for her to answer. A full kitchen with the same sort of spells that the Carl used on the pack house would be perfect. And then nice bedrooms? Not too huge, just big enough, you know? Opal nodded. I have the perfect idea for you. She darted into the house and immediately got to work upgrading the shop so that it looked like a properly rustic smithy, complete with a forge and a carving area for making wood and bone items in the back room. It didn't do all the cool things that Carl's versions usually did, but it would function. She gave it that much rune work. Using too many runes for practicality took all the fun out of the illusions. Besides, the guy didn't have a smithy skill, he just had some repair skills that let him fix damaged gear. Carl could help him get more of them if he needed them, but that would come later. Now, she could head up to the actual house. The first thing was always the kitchen, and Opal made a lovely one, with thick wooden countertops, as a nod to the Lycan's love of nature. Then, she decorated the main room, which was already large enough to satisfy her. Cozy was good, and that let her do the fun part, the bedrooms. One giant 4-post bed, with gossamer curtains, super fluffy blankets, a thick fur rug on the floor that would be super soft on the toes, and magical fireflies that flitted around the ceiling. They were illusionary and incorporeal, so they couldn't be chased out. But they would glow in the dark like a nightlight. Then, the masterpiece. The ensuite was 2 rooms, and she gave the toilet a dual-function bidet and cleansing rune button so you would actually be perfectly clean when the water hit you. Some might argue that defeated the point of the bidet. But not Opal. Then, every Leakin girl's dream cleansing station. A stone pool tub larger than the bed, with a waterfall shower that looked like a real waterfall, running down a stone outcrop on the wall. While the bedroom was designed to look like a princess room in a palace, the ensuite looked like it was carved into a stone cave, as the room had no windows, and she finished it with a variable speed venting spell so that you could make it nice and steamy. Some liked very hot showers, but the Lycans might prefer cold water. She forgot to ask. Both were options, she supposed. Come check it out while I do your mom's room. I think it's perfect. Chapter 1762, Domestic Helper. The Lycans rushed into the newly finished room the moment that Opal unlocked the door, and the little girl giggled as she leapt directly onto the bed. Oh, it's like sleeping on a cloud. This is so soft. What is it even made of? Wait, magic. It's made of fluffy magic. Thank you so much, Miss Opal. Opal nodded. Check out your shower. I think you'll like it, and it's got the option for a bath if you sit down. That made the little one laugh, and then laugh even harder as she went into the toilet room. The tissue refills itself. I took some to rub dust out my eye, and it comes right back. The mother sighed. Entertaining a girl her age could either be incredibly easy or impossible. But the super fluffy bed and that fur rug were going to keep her happy for a long time. She also saw that there were books in the bookshelves, though they hadn't started to take out their personal effects yet. The titles looked benign enough. Common Language Literacy Volumes 1 through 4, Theory of Magic, Intro to Combat Forms Volumes 1 through 3 in both Sword and Spear. They're the basic titles that the new home merchant clan gave to Leo when he started school. I don't know what ones she needs, but she hasn't awakened her system yet, so I just gave her a copy of them all. Technically, they're not real, and they can't be taken out of the house, as they're part of the illusion. But they contain all the same pages, so she can use them to study. The Leakin mother gave the Fae a suspicious look. You're surprisingly responsible and reasonable for Forest Trickster. Thank you. Now, let's do your room. What did you want? Anything fancy? Bedroom specialty exercise equipment? Some hard-mounted restraints for indoor acrobatics. The father laughed and winked at Opal, while the mother glared at her. There's the Fae that I should have expected. Hey, I know to keep it PG around the kids. Now, tell me what you need, and I will be certain that the bedroom has all of it. They were in the middle of decorating the master bedroom when a shriek and then hysterical giggles echoed through the house. It sprayed water. Both parents face-bombed in unison as their daughter discovered the bidet function. Some things simply didn't exist in the former Pack Village, so they had never mentioned them before. They hadn't considered that it might come as a sudden shock if someone were to hit that button without knowing what it would do. I think that should be all that we need in a bedroom, the father decided, after looking around the room, which was now no less a palace than the main room and their daughter's bedroom was designed to be. Then, Opal went back to the kitchen and began to layer runes under the countertop. Nobody would ever look there for the activation sequence. When the process finished, a wolf-eared beastkin girl with a fluffy husky patterned tail and a calf-length maid's outfit stood in the kitchen. What is this? I made a helper. She's an illusion, but she can cook if you don't use mythic cooking. She will also clean, help you get the little one to bed, and receive parcels for you. She's also completely loyal to the owner of the house, so she won't betray you, and she can't be bribed. Unfortunately, the helper is not a golem, so there isn't any real combat ability. But my illusions are pretty durable. You did this just to mess with me, didn't you? Did you want me to make a boy? I can make a boy instead. Opal offered. Yes, no tempting my husband with some hussy running around the house. Opal giggled and waved her hand, then gave the mother a thumbs up. Done and done. The helper is now a boy. She looks exactly the same. I assure you, if you check, there have been changes made. The father covered his mouth, doing his very best not to get himself in trouble, as tears of mirth rolled down his cheeks. Dealing with the Fae was never easy, but having Opal turn the maid into a pretty boy in a dress had caught him completely off guard. The look on his wife's face was somewhere between intrigued and murderous, as if her other senses were at war with her eyes, and she wasn't sure how she was supposed to react to this news. And that only made it funnier. Change the damned uniform.
Fine.
But I still think that one is cuter. In a butler's uniform, the assistant was still a very pretty beastkin man, but at least he looked masculine enough that her primal instincts didn't scream at her to get that person away from her mate. Lycan females were intensely protective of their mates and instinctively felt threatened by any other woman getting near him. The men weren't any better, but if the male was smaller and weaker than them, they felt much less threatened. It didn't even matter what species Opal had picked. Any female, except one from a species so distinct that they couldn't be viewed as a threat, would have set her off. In the future, if you want to help the families with a staff member, either use this pattern or give them a Naga. Nobody views the Naga as a threat to the mate bond. Naga aren't interested in bipeds that way, the father explained. Oh, that's not a bad idea. They take up a lot of space, but they can reach very high. I will be sure to ask the others if they want a Naga butler. Then, Opal was flying out the window, off to find someone else to help renovate their new house. They had so many new members to the guild. Half of them wanted to stay in the big house, but she should still get at least a dozen houses to renovate today. She would just have to keep track of where everyone was going so that she didn't end up disappointed by houses and shops that Carl had already helped with. His pet space skill worked entirely too well with illusionary domain and reality warp. He was cutting in on her turf. Chapter 1763. Branching out. Back in the city, the party ran late into the evening, while Carl and Opal worked to renovate all the houses that might possibly need improvements in the new guild compound. You could more properly call it a village, as there was no wall around it to keep anyone out, and there were public shops all over, which the Lycans were rushing to prepare for occupancy. They were a third the size of the original clan that was here, but this place had everything that they needed. Open wilderness to hunt and run, a short walk to the ocean, a steady stream of fresh water to play in, and most importantly, no hostile neighbors. They were still working on getting everyone set up when Dana arrived at first light, accompanied by Kara and Ray. Now that they had their own space again, Ray wanted to set up a clothing shop, to be run by gargoyles or Lycans, naturally. Branch leader, good work picking a location. Dana teased as she saw Lycan children running through the streets in the pre-dawn light. They were all going to meet their friends before their classes started for the day. The Lycan pack didn't have much for a school, but Opal had graciously made copies of the basic school books in the illusionary domain that would serve as the new school. It wasn't much, but they weren't a large pack, and the elders thought that it was best to keep teaching the children here, instead of sending them off somewhere else. Carl had offered to put in a good word with the new home, so the kids could go to school there. They had all the knowledge that young immortals would need. However, the Lycans were not big on outsiders educating their children. Keeping up the culture of the pack was already hard enough, without some teachers who understood nothing about Lycans filling the minds of children with random values. There were truly evil sorts of immortals in the world who would gladly siphon off the potential of the powerful species for their own growth, and letting the children get involved with strangers before they could defend themselves might stunt them forever. The news that they would not be coming to the tiny world to learn was a great disappointment to Lotus. She would get over it, but Kara saw potential in this arrangement. They had brought literally hundreds of fluffy things into the Darklight host, and then put them in a location that Lotus couldn't get to without advancing. If that wasn't a motivator for her, the Badger didn't know what would be. However, it wasn't going to be too long before the rest of the team advanced anyhow. Living in Carl's tiny world, they were being forced to the peak of Mythic, the same as any other mortal would be. But they had the system on their side, and they'd been studying the fundamental rules for some time already. Kara fully expected that it wouldn't take more than a month, and they would have the old crew back together. She could wait that long. Or she could go talk to Remy and see what they could do about forcing them right to the bottleneck with a bit of alchemical assistance. She didn't quite understand what was so hard about the fundamental rules that humans struggled with it. But she had no trouble at all advancing, nor did any of the other beasts. Tion hadn't even intended to advance, and he did it anyhow. Remy was on board with that. They could definitely do something to get the team up to standards. They were already at least one full stage behind anyhow, so it would be a challenge to force them to keep up. But it was better that they were immortals. They could still go back and forth to the tiny world, so they weren't going to miss out on the bunnies and the baby dragons. There really wasn't a downside to finding a way to help them reach the bottleneck so they could undergo tribulation. Plus, Remy already knew from the others they had obtained that you wouldn't be forced to advance before your time. The tribulation simply wouldn't start. Lotus wiggled her nose, then sneezed. Someone is thinking of fun things behind my back. The bunnies in the kitchen laughed at her insistent tone. They were on their 5th batch of pastries for the morning, learning all the favorite recipes of the tiny world from the little cleric in preparation for the promised new cooking skills they were going to get. Lotus might be a bit flaky, but the Werbear had promised them it would happen, and she looked pretty reliable. With a former cleric in a relationship with someone furry, the bunnies felt much safer being around her. It tempered her fluff obsession at least 10%, which put it at the tolerable level. But she also had that baby spirit bear, which appeared to be at least 60% pure fur. Picking it up, the bear was much smaller than it looked. But Lotus had washed its fur, and it was much more fluffy than a wild bear would ever be. And the bunnies loved it. Back in the new guild village, Carl greeted the elders of the new home merchant clan. "Gentlemen, welcome to the new Darklight Host Outpost. I think that this is going to be a great opportunity for the clan. With this town in place, our exploration teams now have a safe space to rest and restock on their travels. I am still a member of the clan, and I don't intend to change that anytime soon, even if I mostly move to the guild house here. That does present some opportunities for us all to make Elder Douglas cry, though." Socrate began to laugh. "Oh, make him cry harder than he's going to when we bring back the increased loot volume from 4 runs through the dungeon at Tell. So much harder. You see, I was thinking that we could let the clan set up an outpost of the warehouse here, so they could move goods back and forth through the territory without members going all the way back. There are no clans along the north coast between our locations, so it's all ours by default. It might not be the most abundant land that we've ever come across, but there are some randomly appearing instances and dungeons, as well as the wild resources. The towns are actually quite some distance apart. So, instead of wasting an entire day or more going back with a full stock of resources, they could deliver them here, and then take another route back with an empty inventory." Chapter 1764. Allied Locations. Elder Alex frowned. That idea was actually a pretty good one. Many of the larger clans had multiple branch locations, and assigned an elder to supervise the branch office. Sure, there was some duplication of duties, but if they had a clan warehouse here, they could move goods between the two using the system. That would let them double productivity, as Carl had suggested. But having the Darklight host out here, along the north coast, would also help boost the mana levels in the wilderness. He could already feel that Carl had energy-gathering arrays active in the city that were working to improve the density. That would indirectly help the region around them as well. Carl fully intended to do much more. There was some sort of energy vortex in the deep ocean that was draining a bit of energy from all over this side of the continent. If he diverted just a bit of it back toward the guild house and let it radiate, it would create an eddy in the current, and he would get far more than he was losing. And the epicenter was southeast of the new home merchant clan. The Darklight host guild house was northwest. So, the excess energy would be pulled across the entire region. But most of what he intended to gather was from the ocean region north and west of him, energy that had already been pulled from the mainland. So, nobody would miss it. If he made the gathering array non-directional, they would feel it in both Telhusto and Condom. That would not lead to friendly reactions. The effect would be felt offshore, especially by the Blue Elves. But the territory wasn't claimed and wasn't permanently inhabited. So, there was no harm in it, and the elves likely wouldn't give them any troubles. There was also a small dock area here. It was only intended for a maximum of 2 ships at a time to be docked, and the water on one side would only allow a small fishing vessel without running aground. So, it was unlikely that anyone had a real trading relationship with this clan before they were eliminated. Elder Alex watched the children rushing off to class, and the adults beginning to set up shops in the recently reclaimed buildings, getting ready for their first day of operations. How are you even planning to get outsiders to come here to buy things? This isn't on any of the usual routes, and there is no road.
Carl tapped the side of his head.
I have a plan. You see, I'm going to create a made-to-order item service. At an incredibly inflated price, of course. But they'll only pay after the item with the stats they requested is ready. We will advertise it in the other cities of the region, mentioning it as we spread Ray's clothing offerings at the markets. At first, we will just get the desperate, the ones who need a very specific thing to advance or complete a task. Then, the ones who have heard that we can make things happen and couldn't find what they needed anywhere else. Give it a few years, and we will have a reputation and a client base. That makes sense. The clan is already clamoring for more of your products. I'm assuming that you taught some of these lichens your secret skills.
Yeah.
Not all, or even most of them. But we've got a handful of new craftsmen and many new cooks. That is enough to get things rolling here in the village. Did you want to come see the new guild house? It turned out pretty well. Carl offered. That sounds lovely. I'm assuming that it will be nearly as impressive as your apartment. Carl laughed. Well, the apartment usually links to the tiny world, so this isn't quite as impressive, but the pure variety of options that we can offer in the guild house are far superior. You see, I did all the bedrooms with separate spells, so they adjust to the person they're assigned to. If I give you a room for the night, it will change the entire interior to better suit you, according to the system's estimation of what you will like. That is wild. All right, I need to see this. We can stay here an extra night. I will call Elder Douglas over to explain the situation. That way we can work together to convince him to open a branch of the warehouse here. With 3 elders on your side, it should be much easier to convince him, and we won't have to get the clan leader involved or force him. If he agrees on his own, it's much better. Elder Alex took out his communication stone, and within seconds, Elder Douglas was standing beside them. Well, did you get the loot? I saw your message to meet you here, the warehouse elder asked impatiently. We did 4 runs with increased loot volumes. We've got plenty to trade over to you. But that's not why we called you here. The members of the Darklight host have recruited the Blackwoods Pact to their guild, and they're setting up in the old Hyperion sect village, with the clan leader's approval. We were thinking that it might be good for the clan to set up a branch of the warehouse here, so that gathering teams can unload at the halfway point and get more on the way back. It will double the amount that they can get on a trip, if they have good luck. Elder Douglas silently calculated the level of nuisance versus the rewards. Then the amount of new loot that these members of the Darklight host were likely to create and sell to the clan through Carl, so he could trade it for credits and items they couldn't make. It likely would be better to have a branch here, so that he could assign someone else to deal with them. Perhaps he could send Min over here? She was good at dealing with them. Chapter 1765. Douglas arrives. Elder Douglas took a deep breath before answering slowly. I agree that it will be good for the clan to solidify our presence in the area. The other clans that we eliminated during the battle were left to be claimed by whoever wanted them, as the clan leader didn't intend to expand. However, now that the Darklight host is setting up here, we're already expanding, even if it's not official. It will show the region that we don't lack strength, and as you said, an outpost to drop off resources would be an advantage for clan members taking missions. We will be able to send them on longer outings if they have a second location where they can rest and resupply. It will also cut down on the chances that they are ambushed, with clan members holding the only other village along the north coast. Not that there are all that many clans fighting over this territory. But we do get some rare material spawns, and when we get a random instance appearing, there are countless conflicts. The other elders nodded, then Socrate sighed. We really do need to call over Elder Fersham as well. He will want to say before we start opening new locations. He was the most powerful of the clan's elders Carl knew. He also held a position something like a vice guildmaster or the clan leader's assistant. When there were issues that needed an impartial judge, that was him. And he was also in charge of the defense while the clan leader was fighting. I will call him over now. The situation is already settled, but letting him get some words in will make him more amenable when it comes time to shut members over to run shops and operate the warehouse. I might also expand the alchemy counter so that they can restock on potions and pills while they're here. Who knows, it might actually help with recruitment. He added, It can't hurt. We're in a good spot here, and closer to the major cities, if that's something that the others are worried about. Honestly, I think that the biggest deterrent to getting members was likely the nickname. When everyone calls you the newbies, it doesn't exactly encourage people to join you. Carl reminded him. Socrate laughed as he waited for Fersham to arrive. The peak immortal elder arrived only moments later, looking somewhat concerned until he saw a whole lot of Leakin children running around the streets. Then he was very
Concerned.
all right, someone catch me up on current events. I thought that you want to do a dungeon run? How did that turn into a Darklight Host Guild house, a Leakin pack, and a branch location application? Well, you see, what happened was... Elder Alex began, and Fersham pinched the bridge of his nose. If I'm going to hear half-truths, I might as well get them from the source. Carl, what did you do? Well, you see. The other elders laughed, and Dana patted the elder on the shoulder. We finished the dungeon run, got bonus rewards, and went to town to celebrate. We made friends with one of the Leakin elders, and then someone decided to start trouble. That led to the Lycans village being attacked, so we took them in, and decided that this place would make a great guild house location, since it's all complete and abandoned, she elaborated. That sounds quite reasonable. I'm surprised that someone was dumb enough to start trouble with your group. With 3 elders and an avatar of the world dragon, the group isn't exactly a soft target. Carl laughed. They tried to abduct Dana while she was in the library, making a skill book for the Leakin elder. Fersham sighed.
All right.
Now I understand. They didn't realize how dumb they were. And they never will, either. We sorted them out right quick. But their clan got mad about it, and that's how the Lycans got involved. They started attacking anyone who reported the incident to the town guards. Kara added, So, you're not in trouble, being hunted by law enforcement, or going to bring someone to my office to make me account for the recent events orchestrated by my clan members? Kara thought about that for longer than Fersham was comfortable with. No, it should be fine. Nobody is going to come to the clan to complain about this incident. Fersham noticed that didn't actually rule out people coming to his office to complain about things that Carl's group had been doing, only to complain about this one specific incident. So, how is the loot? We have a lot of members looking for higher grade items lately, and your team was taking longer to get back than expected. We've got dozens of items, mostly rare grade, some epic. If that's not going to be enough for the week, we can go back again. Now that we've triggered the Iron Man event inside the dungeon, we should continue to get improved loot from it every time that we visit, even if we don't manage to trigger it again. Fersham sighed. Next, you're going to tell me that you found the legendary tameable pet. They gave it to a green dragon cleric, and it made her into a beast master. Elder Alex agreed. Now I know why the clan leader is not answering my messages. Opal giggled. Oh no, that's a whole different thing, involving plum wine and a 3-meter-tall supreme ranked pack leader with muscles on his muscles. Thanks, I didn't need that mental image. You're welcome. Fersham found that he was actually getting used to all the oddities of Carl's group. He used to react to those little provocations, but now he realized that the little Fae was actually proud of herself for giving him such vivid mental imagery. He was going to ask another question, but the gathering of elders had caught the attention of the pack, and there were Leakin elders coming their way, all tagged as Darklight host members. Chapter 1766, and then Fersham. Fortunately for Fersham, he recognized some of these elders as he had dealings with their pack in the past. Fersham, good to see you again. Have you come to help us settle in? These fine guild members of ours have already done much of the work and stayed up all night getting housing and shops ready for this morning. One of the female elders greeted him. They called me here about setting up a clan warehouse in town. But while I'm here, I should also make a deal with whoever is in charge when the pack leader is away. Carl will certainly come get things from the warehouse for all of you, so we can work out a deal to have your members earn new home clan credits if you take on missions or trade in items. Did you have craftsmen? The elder smiled. The Carl has helped us with that as well. We now have a wide selection of craftsmen, thanks to his assistance. So, we will be creating much wealth for the merchants to distribute around the continent. Forsham's expression went from intrigued to annoyed as he realized that Carl had simply spread an advanced crafting skill through the pack so that they could make all sorts of powerful items. One Carl making uncommon grade rings for the warehouse was already enough to make him incredibly wealthy by clan standards. But if the whole pack started doing it, they were going to struggle to sell them all. How many craftsmen in total? Forsham asked. Not counting the cooks? About 10. Most people held off, or didn't want to do it. But we've got some rune crafters and alchemists now. That will be enough to support the pack. Don't worry, we know that there is a limit, and we won't flood you with items just to make some extra money. Finally, someone reasonable, Forsham muttered. I think that we elevate his blood pressure. But that's nothing compared to what these fine gentlemen are planning to do to Elder Douglas, Carl joked. Oh, we actually ran the dungeon 4 times. All with increased loot. There is a lot. Well, I can't get mad at you for that. We did ask you to get as much equipment for the clan as you could. There are too many broken items after the battle. Even the amount that is going to be coming from the Darklight host members will take some time to completely equip the clan. Even if they all had the credits to replace what they needed, they didn't. Especially when there were so many rare and epic grade items coming in from the elders who had gone out in the last day or two. Everyone had been trying hard to get what they could for the clan, and it was starting to add up. If the proceeds of this run were as extreme as they sounded, with dozens of pieces of good gear, it would change the whole mood at the warehouse. Elder Forsham, I thank you for your clan's willingness to help us out as the pack transitions from forest life to village life. The new skills that we have gained as members of the Darklight host are going to go so far to supporting the community. This change will be amazing for all of us. And as you know, we have a large number of druids. If your exploration teams need tanks or healers, we are willing to cooperate freely. The Lycans are a powerful species with solid regeneration against most attacks. I believe that this cooperation will be to everyone's benefit, the Lycan elder explained. You are right. While we have started to advance classes, most of our clan is still warrior-based immortals. The Lycans chuckled. They were one of the very few groups on the continent that were
not
warrior-based. Even with the system providing choices, entire clans still picked the exact same route, hoping to follow a template to supremacy that had worked for their clan leader. It was good logic, and sometimes it even worked. But one thing that it did was create a massive number of ascended immortals with very similar skills. Following another's path could get you at least that far without issues before you had to personalize your growth. Many realized too late and had to rebuild their path at peak immortal, remaining stuck there for millennia. But that was the price you paid for easy power. Alright, I won't object to that. We always need more members at the ascended power level who have classes other than damage dealing. However, if you have any mages, I would ask that you beg Carl to teach you some golem-type skills. I suspect that he can teach some to the druids as well. Even 1 or 2 constructs can rewrite the tactics to many fights and make them disproportionately easier. Forsham replied, A summoned spirit bear tyrant, for example. Elder Alex muttered, A what now? He got a skill to summon the spirit bear tyrant. You know the one? That bastard of a boss that's immune to physical damage?
Carl can summon it now.
Some sort of legendary reward for completing the dungeon with the Iron Man title and the pet. Carl nodded. It's a reward for getting the rare pet and not taking the class yourself. I gave it to a green dragon cleric, as I had previously held the class. So, it gave me the Summon Spirit Bear Tyrant spell as a reward, and I taught it to my Dana mage. Elder Forsham made that pinching the bridge of his nose stress relief gesture again, and Remy helpfully offered him a painkiller. These are good for headaches. I suspect that you might want to keep some in your pocket for a while. Well, maybe not in your pocket, or you won't get cupcakes. But somewhere. Cupcakes? Oh, from the badger. What does that have to do with having painkillers? Remy laughed. She gives them to people with empty pockets as a consolation prize to relieve their poverty. Forsham's confused expression turned to a faint smile. You know, the moron thinks they're magical. As in, he thinks he's got a blessing spell that gives him random free food. And he's always broke. Chapter 1767, Leo's Adventures. While the elders met with Carl and Dana, Opal and Leo were on an adventure. You see, Leo had found many others as a parent age here, and while he wasn't close enough to just go to his own classroom, he could go visit them. So his sister had volunteered to go with him to make sure that everyone was happy with the new school that she had made. The books were all illusionary, duplicates of the real school books that Leo used in class. But that was fine. They weren't going to wreck them on purpose, so the illusions should be durable enough. The Leakin children watched the little Tortolin enter the small schoolhouse, accompanied by the Fae that had helped make most of their houses. Hi, I'm Leo, one of the Carl's partners. We're too far from school for me to go today. Can I join you? The little ones rushed over, intrigued by the turtle boy. They had never seen one before, and Leo certainly looked like a friendly sort. Meeting new friends and pack members was never a bad thing in the minds of Alikins. So, even before the teacher could respond, he had been welcomed by the group, and they were pulling him into the room to show off their supplies. These are our favorite learning blocks, one of the kids explained. Learning blocks. They're enchanted, and they glow when you give the right answer. Now, that was a cool function. You just give them a bit of mana, and they give a question. Leo activated the wooden block, and a question appeared in the air. If a Leakin pup can swim 2 meters a second, how long does it take to retrieve a prize that is 4 meters offshore, in 3 meters of water? The kids looked shocked. That was a hard one. But after a split second of counting, the first answers came out. 30 seconds. No, it's got to be 14. Leo giggled. It's a trigonometry problem. The answer is 10 seconds because you swim straight through the water, not across the top then down. The kids looked stunned, but the teacher looked incredibly impressed as the block glowed bright green. I'm a turtle, I know about swimming. The Lycans howled with laughter, and one of the girls activated the block again. If Tommy's mom makes a snack at 4:30, Dave's mom makes early dinner at 5, and your mom makes dinner at 8, how many times can you eat after school without being rude? Leo laughed. He knew for sure that Hawk would know the rules to snack etiquette. All the Lycans giggled and turned to Leo. This is a pack one. Do you know the answer? 2. Leaving so soon after the snack to get to another dinner sounds too fast. Oh, you're good at this. Then it brought out one that nobody knew. If the leaves of the fire lily are being collected to make medicine, do you pull the whole plant or just cut the stem? There was a moment of silence. Then the teacher pointed at a shelf. The botany books are over there. James, go get every group a book. Do you remember how to look up information in new books? The Leakin boy nodded eagerly and ran off to get a stack of textbooks. A group formed around Leo as everyone turned to cluster with the people currently near them. That was how the pack did things, as they considered themselves one big family, and the leaders didn't approve of forming cliques. At least not in the youngest classes. Opal landed on the teacher's shoulder as the kids searched for information on the fire lily and began reading out loud to their groups. Do you have everything that you need? I did my best, but I wasn't sure what else they used to teach the kids other than the books. The teacher nodded. You did amazingly well. We brought most of our stuff with us, but we never had all these textbooks before. The pack has always been traditional and usually taught things by word and memory. That's why we have the blocks. But having all these books is much easier than having me explain it all to them. I don't think that I actually know the answer to this one, so it must be responding to Leo. The questions should all be something that someone in the room knows. Opal flitted off her shoulder, giggling. I think it's reacting to me. I know the answer to this question. But Leo clearly doesn't, and he didn't think of asking Hawk for the answer. Hawk knows all things fire-related. But we also picked these once before. You don't pick the whole plant, you take a cutting and don't kill any of the plants entirely. It lets them grow back flowers at the same strength and doesn't cause the other flowers in the area to react. They can be dangerous if you set them off, and they burst out with fire element energy. The kids found the flowers in the book and began slowly reading everything about them. Halfway down, they found their answer. If you pulled them up by the roots, the plant would explode with the force of a fireball spell. That sounded painful to the Lycans. Singed fur would heal, but it hurt, and it smelled really bad. They didn't stop there, though. They read the whole article on the fire lily before putting the books back on the shelf. They had learned a new thing today, and that meant it was time for recess. Leakin children were even more distractible than Leo was and needed constant activity to keep them focused. And that meant it was time to go play tag. The kids rushed outside, with Opal and the teacher following them. Today, they had a dilemma, as Leo wasn't as fast as a Leakin pup. Fortunately for him, he had tricks that would help him in a game of tag, like the way that he could simply float up into one of the trees to let the chaser run by before he came back down. The pups howled with laughter as they realized that Leo had tricked them. They thought he was hiding behind the tree, and the chaser had run a full ring around it before giving up and going after someone else, only for Leo to drop down from the branches after he was gone. Their day's learning was not about to end there. Leo never got tired, not with Indomitable in effect all the time. So, while his short legs might not be able to keep up easily, he could run forever. Chapter 1768. System Requirements. While Leo and Opal were at the school, Carl and the elders were picking out the perfect spot for a new warehouse and preparing to do the formal paperwork for the new location. In order for the system to accept that it was a clan warehouse, they had to recognize that this was a branch location of the New Home Merchant clan, and not just a Darklight Host Guild compound. That required a formal alliance between the two, which was easy enough with the elders and the branch leader present. But then they needed to build or choose a location for the warehouse, and have someone from the clan move here, who is not part of the Darklight Host. That meant spreading the news that they were expanding and finding someone willing to move, as well as someone to run the warehouse. We could arrange for a portal array so that people could just walk back and forth. That would make it easier to get people to move. They wouldn't be missing out on much, and it would give the mission teams a shortcut to get to this region without missing out on the life that they were used to in the clan.
Carl suggested.
Asking immortals to leave their hometown was much more difficult than expected, as so many were used to being in one spot with the same routine. However, the elders were sure that someone would be looking for a change. That's not a bad idea. We often send out missions to collect specific plants that are closer to this region because of the varying elemental affinities of the region. Most wouldn't go this far if they didn't have a portal. So, it will really help their gathering efforts and earn them some extra clan credits. Elder Fersham nodded in satisfaction, convinced that his plan would work. There was only one thing that he had forgotten to account for: superstition. The moment that he sent out the message, he got immediate responses, looking to move to be closer to the avatar of the World Dragon. Many of the members believed that it would bring them good luck to be closer to the avatar, while Swag and his group were all convinced that Carl had a blessing on them from the World Dragon that simply made good things happen around them. So, they were eager to move here and try their luck in a new location, where there might be new dungeons for them to do, and new areas to explore for materials that they hadn't been searching before. Anything that might turn around their fortunes was worth trying at this point. They all had managed to get through the battle well enough, but they were constantly struggling to get ahead of the resources that they needed to keep up their progress. That was why they had agreed to work with Swag in the first place. He might be a moron, but he was always up for a mission, and he very rarely failed to actually accomplish it. Never in a way that would earn him more than minimum rewards, but enough to keep him going. It looks like we're not going to have any issues getting the bare minimum for the clan to count this as a branch location. Technically, the only guild-linked building in town is the guild house. The rest are guild property assigned to individual members. So, it's technically like any other town, available for rent if vacant. I could change that, I suppose, but letting the clan move in before anything is finalized in the system seems best. We can transfer some of the buildings to the clan, so the system recognizes them as permanently belonging to the clan, instead of to the Darklight Host as a reward for victory in combat. Carl offered. That works for us. Let's pick out a warehouse and get this started. Anyone who wants to move here can rent a place in town, but a clan warehouse needs to fully belong to the clan. The system won't recognize it any other way. Carl nodded. All right, I remember seeing a suitable warehouse not far from here along the main street. If we're going to have a clan warehouse, we need to put it somewhere that people can find. Where is better than putting it on the main street, only 2 doors down from the candy shop? The Leakin elders had snapped around at the word, and they realized that there really was a candy shop, built by one of their own pack members. I see this ending very badly. The children love sugar far more than they should be, and they don't get cavities because lichens regenerate teeth as well as flesh. Keeping them from giving themselves a massive sugar rush is an ongoing battle. Carl laughed. Fortunately, we have a method of dealing with that where I am from. We call it an allowance. You see, the best way to limit the amount of sugar that the children take in is to limit their access to the funding to obtain it. You see, with limited funding and many fun options, they must prioritize which of them they're going to spend limited resources on. So, while the pack naturally shares everything, putting a price on treats and luxuries helps the children learn to prioritize. We do the same to green dragon clerics and teenage human boys. What do the two of them even have in common? The Leaken Elder asked. Other than that, they both make questionable decisions using non-logical selection methods. They're also liable to blow through money before they do any form of calculations. Only once they have made that mistake once will they begin to do the calculations on how to best choose to spend their days and resources. I believe that it will also work for Leaken children. Elder Alex laughed. You missed the most obvious one. Teenage human boys and green dragon clerics are the only ones in this world who are curious enough to see what happens when you try to touch a dire bear. Chapter 1769. The Right Warehouse. The warehouse that Carl picked out for the clan wasn't anything glamorous, but it was large and in a prime location. If they were back in the Golden Dragon Nation, Carl would have said that it was an abandoned department store, but he had never seen anything resembling the concept outside of that one nation. There were large stores, distribution warehouses, but not the kind of variety store that you could just wander around in until you found the thing that you didn't know you needed. It was actually a better system, in his opinion. While you ended up spending your limited money on things you didn't need, it would also show the immortals things that were available and they hadn't considered before. If you didn't know that something was available, it was entirely up to you to research and find out what worked for the situation that you were in. So, limited resources meant that you wouldn't even find out that there might have been a solution right under your nose the whole time. Even if you were immortal, it was impossible to know everything about everything, so there was a good chance that many of the plants that even the alchemists stockpiled had uses that were not widely known. Finding those uses was most of what Remy and Socrate had been doing, and even how they were still coming up with new recipes using the same basic ingredients in different proportions and combinations. Forget that there were thousands of rare resources available as well. Most of those were likely to be used in the least optimal possible manner, simply because someone heard that it might help with the growth issue they were having. He'd even seen people get resources out of the warehouse and consume them directly, with no refinement at all. That couldn't be the best way. This warehouse looks good. We can work with this. The only real question is how much we should transfer here. Elder Douglas noted.
Carl shook his head.
Don't transfer anything. It will fill as people bring in resources. I know that the warehouse in the main compound was already full to the point you had an off-site storage. So, just let the clan members fill this one with resources as they travel, and then we can make a runic array for the front desk clerks to have the bunnies retrieve items from the other location. A simple micro-portal will do for most things, letting the bunnies pass items through between towns. That way, you can say it's all in stock at both locations, but some things will be large enough that they need transport or to be picked up wherever they're stored. For example, if someone requests a large statue carved with protective wards. Elder Douglas nodded. Actually, we will need a few of those ourselves. Perhaps we should ask the Leaken Elders, as they have a higher base power level. Carl shrugged. That is true. Though, I can make an item and leave it partially unfinished, just waiting for the clan leader to imbue it with power to activate it. Then, it will come online as a supreme ranked protective ward. Oh, that is much better. If you can do that, we can have the warehouse just as well protected as our original one, and we only have to wait for the clan leader to find time to assist. Carl resisted the urge to say something about her being busy for some time, and simply nodded in agreement. Well, we can start with what we can do, and then have her add the extra layers with our assistance. It might not be as good as the original warehouse right away, but there also isn't anything in it. The elders chuckled at that. The warehouse wouldn't stay empty for long when there were a whole bunch of craftsmen in the town. Once they all got to work, that warehouse was going to fill quickly, and the elders all knew that Carl had a separate space full of rare magical plants and alchemy ingredients that he wasn't currently shipping to the clan. That was just the nature of the space, and the resources were there for the people who lived in it. But that didn't mean that there weren't some that could be harvested and sold without any impact at all on the tiny world. Some grew so fast that they were left to die at the end of their growth cycle instead of being harvested. They were just the background filler of the tiny world, advanced from their base form by the high energy density and the presence of immortal energy. I just realized something. We don't have bunnies here. It's not that we're short on bunnies. They're terrified of the lichens, so they're not going to want to come out and help. Or, if they do, they're going to be so skittish that it will be impossible to get anything done. You could keep them in the warehouse if you wanted, but that would be a restrictive life for them. Carl added. Elder Douglas frowned. Nothing ran without the bunnies there behind the scenes to keep things running smoothly. If they had to operate without them, even a simple warehouse would require a change of strategy. The Lichen elders shrugged. We have a strategy for that, since we didn't have bunnies in our village either. We just have the non-combat classes, and the young ones do the jobs that require being behind the scenes. That way they learn how things usually go for the warriors, and the ones with specialty skills that aren't needed all the time can feel productive when they're not going outside. Elder Douglas nodded. That's who we usually have working the counter. We just keep the bunnies for the retrieval and cleaning duties since they don't have system access, so there is no point in them stealing items. Behind him, Dana shared a sly smile with Kara, then covered the badger's mouth before she could tell him. Bunnies without systems was about to change. Chapter 1770. Kara will help Lotus. Lotus didn't have enough skill points to get all of the abilities that she truly wanted, but she had followed in Carl's steps, and she had managed to get the first few skills of the skill tree. That included Skill Master and Skill Book. Now, she could make her own skills into a book that could be taught to others. That wasn't perfect, as she realized that mythic cooking couldn't be made into one simple book. It was like the leatherworking skill books that Ray had used, and there were like 4 stages before they had the full skill. But because it wasn't a full skill, she couldn't have the bunnies activate the system with it, even when she tricked them into opening it. Now, she needed to either abduct the Carl for a day or to find a skill that she could teach the bunnies to activate the system so that she could teach them cooking. It was likely easier to find Carl. She was making headway, though. Every day, the bunnies got more used to her presence, and Lotus suspected that they had learned to use Tifa to distract her when she began to fixate on bunny ears. The little bear absolutely loved being around people, and even the gargoyles around the house would stop to play with it when they weren't busy. Why can't I call Carl? I want more kitchen helpers? We're almost out of snacks again, she complained as Ophelia came in to see how things were going. The big werbear patted her on the head. I just asked Thor, and Carl is busy setting up a new guild house for after we advance. But he's willing to ask Kara to help you with the training. Kara? Apparently, she can also do the skill training thing that Carl does. I think it's part of the shared skills thing. If you're compatible with their skills, you can use them. And if they're compatible with yours, they can use them as well. Tifa nodded happily. She was actually quite adept with healing magic now. Lotus had all sorts of healing spells, and the spirit bear could use most of them. She couldn't turn into a tree, or anything else. But she could use direct heals, area heals, healing totems, and long-duration cleansing spells. In Tifa's mind, that was the ultimate path for a spirit bear. Not damage dealing, that didn't suit her at all. But being invulnerable to most attacks, as she kept all her friends healed, that was the proper use of these new abilities. The others in the tiny world thought that it was something of a waste having the bear not be a main tank type. Yet, once they saw how happy it was dropping healing spells on the dragon nests so that all the hatchlings could wake up fully rested, they began to reconsider. A healer that was impossible to stop wasn't bad either. While Carl worked out the details of staffing the warehouse, Kara returned to the tiny world at Thor's summons. There was much potential here. So much potential. Lotus. My dear little sister, I hear that you have fun plans for the day. Ophelia frowned and wrapped her arms around the former cleric, which nearly blocked the entire view of Lotus above her waist. I do. We're going to teach bunnies trade skills. I'm like 90% sure that it will work. We've got a bunch who would like to work in the kitchen, and then I think that we can get some of them to work on other things. Can you teach them tailoring or leatherworking? Bunnies love to be helpful, and if they could make everyone's clothes, it would make them so happy. The bunnies nodded. There was nothing better than being helpful. If you were helpful, people were less mean to you. Kara smiled in a way that made Ophelia greatly concerned. I think that I can also teach them how to do runecrafting. Have they seen the break room that Opal made for the ones in the New Home Clan's warehouse? Lotus nodded. Opal made one in the guild house here as well. I think it's different, but I can't get past the kitchen. The bunnies giggled. The Fae was incredibly amused by the fact that the bunnies could now hide from the cleric and exit the separate space anywhere in the house. As it was based on a combination of the pet space and illusionary domain spells, there was some flexibility to the spatial distortion, and she had set a half-dozen spots where they could exit. The bunnies had quickly learned that it was an optimized way to get their work done. They held their morning staff meeting in the break room with Lotus and the others, then they split off to exit all over the area, bypassing the need to move through the house as a group. It was also a great way to escape from curious hatchlings. The dragons were slowly getting larger, but they were only getting more curious, and they were adorably clumsy. That didn't stop them from trying to help. But it did mean that their attempts to help usually made more work for someone else. Yuan and Tenna were the worst. That dynamic duo of Black Dragon and Divine Lightning Dragon seemed to manage to get into everything, and they spent half their days brainstorming ideas for new fun things to do. They were currently in the mountains by the hot springs. Yuan had read about something called cliff diving, and they were going to test that theory today. But it sounded dangerous, so they started with the 3-meter drop into the hot springs. That way, even if it wasn't fun, they would still be in the hot springs, which were nice on the scales. They had a supervisor from the den, watching from a distance as the pair neglected their studies. She would let them play so that they didn't do it somewhere harder to get to when she wasn't watching. Besides, if they panicked at the fall, they could just open their wings and fly away.